2 weeks without a video. Time to make an analysis video. Today we are analyzing a game called Driving Speed 2. Hi everyone, as always Patrick here. If you're already subscribed, make sure you turn on notifications, otherwise YouTube won't tell you if I posted anything. If you are new to the channel, make sure you watch until the very end and consider subscribing if you like it. Okay, Driving Speed 2. Driving Speed 2 is a freeware game made in 2008. Unfortunately, I forgot who developed the game, but I'm pretty sure you can see it in the main menu. Wow, what a way to start an analysis video with. The game was developed by Wheelspin Studios back in 2008. There, I fixed it for you. Despite the fact that the game is a freeware, it's not actually easy to get. The game was published on the Wheelspin Studios website back in 2008, and the website doesn't exist anymore. What does that mean? It means that you can't get this game officially. You can also use Google to search for this game, obviously, and there are websites that have this game, but most of those websites have viruses. So, getting a game with a virus? No thanks, that's not worth it. To make things worse, the game never got a retail release, as in, mini box, big box release. You know the deal. The game isn't available on any digital stores. You can't get this anywhere. So it's basically freeware and an abandonware at the same time. So now you're probably wondering, how did I even get this game? Well, let me tell you. I got this game from a magazine called Click. With that magazine, you get a disc, and on that disc, you can find Driving Speed 2. Speaking of finding things, is Driving Speed 1 even a thing? I've tried to look for Driving Speed 1 before making an analysis video about this game, but I just couldn't find anything about if Driving Speed 1 even exists. So if you know anything about that, please let me know in the comments down below. Also, that disc also contains many different games, like for example Trackmania Nations Forever, which I might do an analysis video on. If you want an analysis video on Trackmania Nations Forever, please leave a comment down below. But do you know what is the best part about that disc? It contains Driving Speed 2 without a virus. Amazing! Now that you know how I got the game, we can finally start analyzing the video properly. And you know how I start my analysis videos. I always start my analysis videos by judging the graphics. I have to say, for a freeware game released in 2008, the graphics are good. Not exactly mind-blowing, but they won't burn your eyes out. I know, I didn't show you any gameplay footage yet, but don't worry, we will get to that later. Now, to prove my point with the graphics, I'm going to compare this game to other freeware games that were also released in 2008. Synctel Race. And that's the only freeware comparison I have. But to be honest with you, this comparison isn't fair. You see, Synctel Race and Driving Speed 2 are both racing games. They did release in 2008, but they want to achieve different goals. Driving Speed 2 is a car racing game, while Synctel Race is a Formula 1 simulator. The graphics in Synctel Race are also way worse than the ones in Driving Speed 2, which you can see right now. What I want to say is comparing Driving Speed 2, actually no, comparing Synctel Race to Driving Speed 2 is like comparing a low budget game to Crysis back in 2007. You see what I mean? It's not fair. By the way, I am going to be very critical on Synctel Race when I make that analysis video. Well, when I make analysis video about the Synctel Race. Just keep that in mind. So, okay, let's get back to the topic. As you can see, the graphics for 2008 are pretty good. The lighting is good, the cars are nicely modeled, and the game overall looks nice, but there are some problems. The backgrounds are pretty blurry and they are basically simple textures. People as well are just simple textures, they don't react in any way, so that's pretty boring to see. You could argue that people shouldn't expect much from a freeware racing game, but when most of your freeware racing game look as good as this game, you should put in an extra effort into designing people and other stuff that I mentioned earlier. But that's just my opinion. You don't have to agree with me here. When it comes to technical stuff, or should I say option menus, it's not very good. The only thing you can change is your resolution. Actually, let me give you a breakdown of what the game supports and what the game doesn't support. Now yes, the game does support 1080p and other widescreen resolutions. There are some graphical options you can change in the menus, like for example specular bloom, and the game doesn't have an FPS cap, which means that your gameplay is going to be smooth. However, there are problems, and I mean a lot of problems. There is no anti-aliasing, there is no anisotropic filtering, there is no VSync, although arguably you don't really need it in this game, and many more and lot more problems. Sorry for that stroke I had there. But there is one big problem that unfortunately hurts the game. There is no FOV slider and the FOV is pretty low. So yeah, that's pretty bad. To make things worse, this is one of those freeware games that doesn't have its own page on the PC Gaming Wiki, meaning that no one knows how to change anything in this game. Well, except for the resolution, but that's very easy to fix. As for the other technical stuff like stability, the game didn't crash, it didn't stutter, it didn't lag, and it worked mostly fine. So for the most part, this is a good freeware PC release. It just made some weird choices in the end. And that's all I have to say about the graphics, so it's time to talk about the story. This is a game in which you race for fun, so obviously there's no story. And because of that, there's nothing to talk about here, so let's move on to the gameplay. Keep in mind that the version I'm analyzing is the version 2.0.5, which means some things might be outdated. But I don't know what things because I didn't play the other versions. I have only played this version that I'm analyzing right now, and we're going to stick with it. There are three things I'm going to analyze in the gameplay sections: the driving, the cars, and the maps. Let's start with the driving. The driving, braking, and handling aren't bad, but aren't good either, but they are above average, but still not on the good level. I would say they are almost good. The reason I'm saying all of this stuff is almost good because there are minor problems with this. Turning in this game is a bit heavy. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. As a matter of fact, as you can see, I am able to make turns without any problems. The problems begin when the turn is very sharp. You have to brake really hard uh, to make a sharp turn. Now you're probably thinking, what kind of argument is this? To be honest, it's hard for me to explain. But did you notice that I went off-road and the car automatically tries to stop? You know, like in most racing games. Well, if your car is trying to stop while going off-road and you brake at the same time, the braking is really effective actually. As a matter of fact, it is more effective than braking normally. You will see what I mean in a moment. Just watch this. As you can see, turning and braking at the same time is not the worst, but it's not that good. But to be honest, I can't complain that much. You can cheese it by just braking and turning separately. No problems there. Since I want to keep this driving segment short, I'm just going to say this. Every single component that is handling, driving, turning, braking feels better individually rather than combining them. But when it comes to using them separately, it's very good. Also, when it comes to driving forward, I have no complaints. The car does what it's supposed to do, and like I've said, I don't have any complaints there. Now that I've kept this segment short, it's time to talk about the cars. Like I've said before, the version I'm reviewing is version 2.0.5, which means there are only 4 cars in the game. Normally I would complain about this, but considering that this is a freeware game, this is not a problem for me. The cars are separated. What do I mean by that? Well, there are 2 different car classes. There's class 1 and class 2. Very easy to remember. There are 3 cars in class 1 and 1 car in class 2. The 1 car in class 2 is the one I am using right now. If you want to see what the other cars are, go back earlier in the video. I basically showcased all of the cars and all the available colors. The only major difference between those cars and classes are how they look. And like I've said before in the video, the cars are nicely modeled, but that's pretty much the only big difference. The colors and skins are also different, and some of them look actually pretty good. However, when it comes to their technicalities, as in brake strength, turning, and other stuff, they behave mostly the same. Except for one car, and that one car is the one that I'm using right now in this footage. Basically the one you're seeing right now. The car I am using in this footage doesn't have the 5th gear, but but the handling and all the other stuff is just as good, if not better, than the cars from class 1. So if you're going to play this game, use the car I am using in this footage. It is without a doubt one of the best cars in the game, if not the best car in the game. Well, in the version 2.0.5 of course. When it comes to cars from class 1, there are differences between them, but they are so small that you might not even bother. I mean, sure, Cobra definitely feels heavier than other cars, and the other two cars feel a lot worse when turning, but like I've said before, don't even bother. The differences are so small that you most likely won't notice them. Sorry for the stroke again. Surprisingly enough, I ran out of things to say about cars pretty quickly, so I'm just going to say this. I know I've said before that the cars are nicely designed. However, without anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering, well, I don't think you'll be able to see this on the video, but there are problems. Without anti-aliasing and anisotropic filtering, the cars look a bit more blurry and pixelated. I think that's the best way to put it. Before I move on to the maps or the tracks, whatever you want to call it, I have to say one thing about the UI. So as you've noticed, you have your typical stuff like lap counter, lap time, best lap, position, speedometer, and the map, and there are those two lines, the green line and the red line. If you are confused by them, they basically show you how hard you are pushing the driving keys. So, for example, if you're using a steering wheel or a controller, you will be able to adjust how hard you want to push those buttons. How fast do you want to drive, basically, or how fast do you want to brake? Because I'm using mouse and keyboard, it automatically pushes the pedals to the max. Sorry about the notification. When you finish the race, the game goes into an autopilot mode and it pushes keys automatically for you. That's why the green lines and the red lines occasionally are not full. Now it's time for me to analyze the last thing I want to analyze, and those are the tracks or the maps, whatever you want to call it. In the version 2.0.5, there are only two tracks in the game, and their names are complicated, so I am not going to say their names. Basically, this is track number 1, and the other track is track number 2. The track number 1 is definitely has more turns, and it's a bit more complicated. This track has about 10 turns, half of them are sharp, so that means you're gonna have to brake really hard to make it to properly turn, but despite all of that, the track is well designed. Unfortunately, while this track is well designed, there are some problems. You see, I was playing this game on a hard difficulty, and while you're playing this game on the hard difficulty, the AI becomes aggressively stupid. It becomes aggressively stupid in a way, if you fail once, you just can't win. You just can't. Forget about it. You can always try to knock someone down, but that's not gonna help you much. They are still stupidly aggressive either way. This is a big problem when you're playing this map because they can make every turn almost perfectly, and even if you try to stop them, you can't do anything about it. That means that the AI knows the track better than you do, and it never should be like this. It's funny, when I talk about this track, I have more things to say about the AI rather than the track itself. Most of the track is just turns. I mean, you can see it on the mini-map, but as you saw before, just a few moments before, as a matter of fact, there is a short segment where you can just drive pretty fast, and this is your chance to overtake your opponents. even though it doesn't work as intended, especially on hard mode. But when you play this track on easy and normal difficulties, you can easily get first place, so no worries there. I really don't want to sound like I'm over exaggerating, but talking about this track right now actually made me really bored, and I wish we could just move on to the second track. Oh, wait, we can? Oh my god, we can! Let's do this right now! Hopefully I'll be less bored this time. This track is more straightforward, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing. As a matter of fact, I think this track has better design than the previous one. This track has more straight lines than it has turns. For example, right now we are on a straight line, and if you know what to do, and if you have a good car, you can easily overtake your opponents and win the race. Just don't make any mistakes, that's all, especially on hard mode. After that there are a few more turns. This turn is the right turn, turn right. I don't really know how to say this properly. I'll be honest, what a great analysis video by the way. This one is a left turn, then a sharper left turn. After that we have one simple right turn, then another simple right turn, another simple left turn, another simple left turn, a bit sharper left turn, and then there's the interesting part. You can shortcut through sand, and as you would expect, when you drive on grass or sand, the car slows down. Luckily, it doesn't slow down as fast as in BMW M3 Challenge, but that's also because BMW M3 Challenge is a simulator or simulation, and not an arcade game like this one. And I would say this is the only time in the entire game where you can use this shortcut. After that you have few sharp turns, one long straight line, then a couple of turns, and you're on the finish line. While I was describing this, you have probably noticed that while this track is more simple in design, and by simple I mean it's very straightforward, it's actually pretty fun. In my opinion, this straightforward track is actually way more fun and way less boring than the previous track I've mentioned. Honestly, analyzing the previous track made me really sleepy, I'm not even going to lie. Now, is there anything that those tracks have in common? They both take place on an actual racing track. They have pit stops, even though they are useless in this game. There are a lot of spectators watching you, and that's pretty much it. I mean, most of the things about those tracks are different. They are definitely different types of racing tracks. That's all cool, but what about the settings? You could see them in the beginning on the video. When you choose your track, you can choose how many drivers you want to race against from 0 to 12. You can choose the difficulty modes, easy, normal, hard. You can choose the classes which you want to race against. It's either random on for all classes, choose class 1, choose class 2, the same class as you're using, and a few other settings available. And the last thing you can choose is the amount of laps you want to take. It can be either a 1 lap race, 2 lap race, 3 lap race, or a 256 lap race. No, I am not joking. Oh, sorry, I meant to say you can choose up to 256 laps. Still a lot. Now it's time to talk about the bad qualities, and to be honest, if you've watched my Volvo the Game or BMW M3 challenge analysis video, you can pretty much expect what I'm going to say here. The complaints I have are almost the same complaints I had in those videos, but I do have to say one but I do have to talk about one more complaint, and that is the glitch that I've encountered. Unfortunately, I didn't record it, so you have to believe me on that one. I got stuck in a wall once, but that's it when it comes to game-breaking glitches. In conclusion, is driving speed 2 a good game? Is driving speed 2 a bad game? Is driving speed 2 somewhere in between? Think of this as a fun time waster. If you are bored and you have absolutely nothing else to play, I would say give this game a go. I'm pretty sure you'll like it. The game has good graphics for a freeware game, the tracks are well designed, and the handling is almost good. If this video somehow convinced you to play the game, well, good luck trying to find this thing without a virus. But that pretty much sums up everything I wanted to say in this analysis video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time. Just